I will vote the Republican ticket.
You
I
will
support the Republican ticket. Trump may be playing Russian roulette, but continuation of the Biden administration is national suicide, in my opinion.
I think this is what a good part of this country believes.
A good part of the country's wrong about that as a rational matter. Patriotism is allegiance to an idea. It's not just an allegiance to your own kind. That's nationalism. Trump is a nationalist. President Biden is a patriot. President Biden is devoted to that constitutional order. Donald Trump is self-evidently not.
During the most recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, historian Jon Meacham used the words of the Founding Fathers when he torched former Trump Attorney General Bill Barr and other cowardly Republicans who claimed to be patriots and principled conservatives, but nonetheless put partisan politics above country, and it was glorious. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video. This most recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher was really, really good, thanks pretty much entirely to Jon Meacham, a historian who had a number of stellar moments in this episode. We're going to do another video about a different set of moments as well, but I want to focus on this one because this comes in the aftermath of Bill Barr publicly declaring that he will nonetheless support Donald Trump against President Biden, even though he has criticized Donald Trump pretty harshly in the past. Just as a reminder, I want to play this clip from the Fox Propaganda Network in which Bill Barr once again reiterated that at the end of the day, he will back Donald Trump over any Democrat.
Well, I've said all along, given two bad choices, I think it's my duty to pick the person I think would do the least harm to the country. And in my mind, that's I will vote the Republican ticket.
You will
I will support the Republican ticket. I think the real danger to the country, the real danger to democracy, as I say, is the progressive agenda. And while Trump, and I said, Trump may be playing Russian roulette, but continuation of the Biden administration is national suicide.
So again, I don't know exactly what Bill Barr means by the woke agenda because he didn't do us any favors. He didn't actually, give an example. And actually, the second video that I'm going to make about this episode of Real Time with Bill Barr dives into that. But Jon Meacham addresses Bill Barr's words here and really the sentiment behind it in these clips. So we're going to play them and unpack them together.
It is what a good part of the country believes. It's also a good part of the country's wrong about that as a rational matter. Now, politics and rationality are not complete bedfellows, which is part of the reason for the Constitution, is that we were going to give reason a chance to stand against passion. What Barr is doing, and what so many, I sometimes think of them as the Peter Millar Republicans, right? These are Republicans who are not full MAGA people. They're men's grill types who don't want Democrats picking judges or setting tax rates. They talked themselves into this twice, in 16 and in 20. And then came December and January of 2020 and 2021. And at that point, I believe, and I say this with care, that it's become evident, to me anyway, that there's a patriotic duty to support President Biden against Donald Trump. For this reason, patriotism is allegiance to an idea. It's not just an allegiance to your own kind. That's nationalism. Trump is a nationalist. President Biden is a patriot. And I'm lucky in that I don't have particular policy passions, particular issues. I want the constitutional order to continue to unfold. And President Biden is devoted to that constitutional order. Donald Trump is self-evidently not.
Again, just a very eloquent rebuttal by Jon Meacham, and I have more clips to play of him on this tangent on the situation with Bill Barr. But as a reminder, this is what Bill Barr used to say about former President Donald Trump, his boss.
Donald Trump's former attorney general spent the better part of last year harshly criticizing his old boss.
It is a horror show when he's left to his own devices. And so you may want his policies, But Trump will not deliver Trump policies. He will deliver chaos.
He knew that the claims of stolen election were false, and yet he decided he was going to try to stay in office by subverting that process. There was very grave wrongdoing here, and I think it's reasonable to say that it falls within the obstruction of a proceeding. Our country can't be a therapy session for, a troubled man like this. He is a consummate narcissist. He will always put his own interests and gratifying his own ego ahead of everything else, including the country's interest.
And again, that's not a comprehensive list of the things that that Bill Barr has said about former President Donald Trump. Again, his boss. That's just a smattering. But to cover it, Bill Barr clearly thinks that there's a credible case that Donald Trump is a criminal, right? In at least a few of the charges against him. He says he's a malignant narcissist who will always put himself above the country. And he recognizes that Donald Trump is a threat to aspects of the constitutional order that Jon Meacham was talking about, the peaceful transfer of power, recognizing the result of free and fair elections. Bill Barr was the one who, that led to Bill Barr ultimately resigning, was a dispute between Trump and Barr over the outcome of the 2020 election. Barr wanted Trump to win, but Barr recognized Trump didn't win and he lost fair and square. So all of these things in context, and yet Bill Barr says the progressive agenda is a greater threat than that, but then doesn't care to elaborate. It's just an example of partisan politics trumping your love of country. Want to play one more clip from Jon Meacham.
And to me, the interesting thing about the Republican Party is if you are, in fact, going to put partisanship as your central organizing principle, if reflexive partisanship is the most important thing, I would argue that you need to go back and read George Washington's farewell address. You need to read the founders that otherwise, they love. They love the founders when they sort of can move it around to agree with them. It's very clear that if party spirit became the organizing principle, that was going to be fatal to the Constitution. And it's very interesting when Barr said it's suicide. I mean, the idea that President Biden's leading us to national suicide, I'm not even sure what he's talking about. But Lincoln used that image in his first major speech in the 1830s. He said, if we ever fall, it's not going to be from a foreign foe. It's going to be from someone internally rising up and mastering those passions. Right. And those passions about partisanship, that's what's ruining us.
I don't disagree with any.
So, again, great stuff from Jon Meacham there. Again, it's everything that we've said. We talked about this in a previous video with Bill Barr. I just think that Meacham put it even more eloquently and with a more rigorous historical context, right? So we've referred to the farewell speech of President Washington in previous videos. It was in many ways a prophecy, right? Obviously not literally a prophecy, but Washington predicted that this system, the system that he helped create and the system that he led, not just in terms of, being the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, the president of the Continental Congress, but also, president of the United States for 2 terms. He recognized even then that the structure would allow bad faith actors and what he called factionalism, but political parties, which is what Meacham's talking about, the partisanship, to allow somebody like Donald Trump to come into power and abuse the system. So we're going to read an excerpt of it. This is again from President Washington's farewell address. He says, all obstructions to the execution of the laws, all combinations and associations under whatever plausible character, with the real design to direct, control, counteract, or awe the regular deliberation and action of the constituted authorities, are destructive of this fundamental principle and of fatal tendency. They serve to organize faction, political parties, to give it an artificial and extraordinary force, to put in place of the delegated will of the nation, the will of a party, often a small but artful and enterprising minority of the community, and according to the alternate triumphs of the different parties, to make the public administration the mirror of the ill-concerted and incongruous projects of faction, again party, rather than the organ of consistent and wholesome plans digested by common councils and modified by mutual interests. However combinations or associations of the above description may now and then answer popular ends, they are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men, Donald Trump, will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying it afterwards, the very engines which have lifted them to unjust dominion. So what he's saying is, he's basically describing, little did he realize, the Republican Party and Donald Trump in 2024. an artful and active minority of the community. The Republican Party doesn't reflect the majority consensus. They've been a minoritarian party for decades, and their policies are entrenched in minoritarian rule, right? They have to win with the Electoral College and gerrymandering and things of that nature, and a civic structure which is designed to give them a leg up. They don't reflect the popular will of the people, and they haven't for decades. And again, unprincipled, unscrupulous men, cunning men like Donald Trump, that's what he's talking about. And he recognized that political parties were the vector by which that happened. Donald Trump would not have been nearly as dangerous if he didn't have the full might of the Republican Party behind him, the Fox propaganda network, right-wing media in the mainstream and the alternative media, all of it working together to put him into power because they think they can use him and then discard him. And it's like Jon Meacham said in the first clip, they've talked them into this. Bill Barr, Mitch McConnell, and other cowardly Republicans who recognize how stupid and narcissistic and unprincipled Trump is are now electing again for the third time to try to use him for their own ends. It's so strange. It's like riding a bull who's kicked you off multiple times and trampled you. I guess you're just going to try to ride it again. It makes absolutely no sense. And it is in defiance of what the flawed founding fathers want. I mean, again, the reason I pitch it this way, despite my respect for President Washington, is because I like using conservatives' own principles and arguments against them. I don't particularly care if the founding fathers took a position on something. If it was a good position, fine. If it was a bad position, then let's discard it. That's the whole point, is moving beyond what they set in stone or what they codified, in 1789. That's the whole point of amending the Constitution and moving on. I don't think we're bound to everything that the founders wanted, but it's conservatives who appeal to the founding fathers every damn day when they can, like Jon Meacham said, selectively. So I love using the founders against them. It's so good. It's so gratifying to say, like, the very people that you claim to revere, that you claim to venerate, would be disgusted with what you're doing to the country now by elevating the likes of Donald Trump and, not just tolerating, but aiding and abetting his authoritarianism. Super gross stuff. I love how Jon Meacham put it. We're going to, again, do another video of the second part of the conversation between Jon Meacham and Bill Barr or Bill Maher, in which they go back and forth. But in the meantime, with regards to this, let me know what you think in the comments.